Hi, Jeff here, and we've changed the lighting so you don't have a Melbourne backdrop behind this net curtain because the light keeps changing and it makes it harder to edit. And we're on a timer, so we're going to try and keep it down to 10-12 minutes. So let's get stuck into it. Our first one is Dara, I always have trouble with your name here, Darakanas Janaswar Ikarala. Indian student of mine, very active. He's asking a very profound question here. Talk about permaculture economics as compared to current economy, please. Okay, with permaculture, we're all about making a living, and there's a big difference between making a living and making money. A living can go way beyond economy. So the first thing we do is try and provide our own needs, or work with systems that provide our own needs in a very local and sustainable way. So our food supply, our energy efficiency of our house, our water supply, and the way we actually make that little bit of extra cash. Our transport, of course, we try and reduce. All our energy requirements. So if we don't have to make much money to grow our own, to produce our own food, we've got our own food mostly, or all our own food. We have a much more energy efficient house, which we don't have to pay a lot of money for energy consumption. We really reduce that by design. This is all design. Our water supply, we've got our own water supply and it's all clean. So we don't need to spend as much time traveling. Right? A lot of our supply line is local, and we're getting really good psychological benefit from knowing that and working with it. It's healthy things to do. It's meaningful. Our life becomes meaningful. So then we don't have the same requirement for currency and exchange and economy. So we can reduce our working week down to, well below 10 hours. We can go 10 hours quite easily. That's quite normal. 10 hours work a week is a healthy working week. But that's while we grow our food and everything else. So your economy, where you need to get a bit of cash, can come down to 2 to 4 hours a week doing something now that you absolutely love. Now, there's a big difference between doing something you absolutely love, which you're always going to do better than something you don't necessarily like doing, but you just do it because you need to make money. When you're making your spare cash, that little bit of extra cash you now need, doing something you absolutely love, you do it well, and you don't really notice you're even working much. Now, then you are truly living. Life is more meaningful. So the permaculture economy can be greatly reduced, along with the energy consumption is greatly reduced, along with transport systems can be greatly reduced, but life gets happier, healthier, and more meaningful. That's the big difference. Making a living is quite different to just making money and wanting to accumulate more and more money. The trouble with the capitalist system is people never know when to stop making money. They can never slow up. They just keep banking it up, even though it's more than you can ever spend in your lifetime, which is just a useless accumulation of just disparity in accumulation of economy. That's not sustainable. It's not even ethical. Okay, next one here. Marty Andrews. Hello, Jeff. I top dressed with worm castings and apparently worms, probably worm eggs, Marty. Mary Andrews. Sorry, Mary. From my red worm compost system in my vegetable garden. Now I have red worms eating my cabbage plants. Any thoughts? Well, compost worms don't live in the soil. If you put them in the soil, they die. They live above the soil in organic matter. If you have plenty of organic matter as mulch in your garden, you got it nice and thick, they'll exist in that mulch layer, but they won't be in the soil. They won't eat the roots of your plants because they can't get down in the soil. They don't exist in the soil. They're not earthworms, they're compost worms. They might get in between your cabbage leaves. Sometimes they'll get in between bananas, leaf sheaths right high up in bananas. They'll live in between leaf sheaths, but they're not necessarily eating that fresh material. They eat decomposing organic matter that's got humic acid release. So don't worry about it. You're just finding them, I expect, in between your cabbage leaf sheaths. When you pull your cabbage leaves apart, you're finding red wigglers in there. It's because you've got a large population in your well-mulched garden. That's my guess. Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay. Jay Smith, hi mate, just wondering if you know much about iodine and selenium deficiency of animals and humans, probably the most common deficiencies worldwide. And I was just wondering if maybe it's the farming, gardening practices that might be the true cause and not the soil. They have cured goiter caused by iodine deficiency worldwide by introducing iodized salt. But not everyone uses it, so it's still an issue. They say they've eaten seaweed to cure goiter for thousands of years, but it seems possible that we weren't farming right back then either. Well, fish, a diet with a reasonable amount of fish will give you the iodine. But the other thing, even though you've got iodine in salt, iodine deficiency and selenium deficiency can be related somewhat to pH, particularly selenium. They both affect the prostate gland, the endocrine system, the pituitary gland, the immunity system, and can make you your health susceptible to other things like cancer and heart disease. But you can get iodine deficiency where there seems to be enough iodine in the food, and that can be caused by radioactivity. So if everything, you can have iodine, what seems to be an iodine deficiency in a desert population. Now, iodine deficiency can naturally occur where you get very large leaching rains, like in the tropics, and you get a lot of leaching of the iodine through the soils because of the massively heavy rains. That doesn't happen in deserts. But and you can have iodine in salt and still get women with, particularly women who have goiters and thyroid gland problems, and that'll track back to there being an airstream of a certain amount of radioactivity coming out of nuclear power stations. That's usually what it is. We are the guinea pigs in all these systems. So in the aid work I do, I often look at what are people dying of? What's the most common thing, and why is that happening? So otherwise, right, what you've got is bare soil agriculture, heavy irrigation, leaching out iodine and selenium, not having lots of mineral interactions through natural processes of decomposition with mixtures of organic material breaking down like we have in compost. So when you're compost gardening and you're making really diverse mixtures of compost with, and the only thing that limits compost is really the golden rule: if it's lived, it can live again. So you can have this massive assembly of materials in compost that have been alive, and now they're going through decomposition processes where there's massive diversity of organisms, ridiculous diversity of organisms are processing these diverse materials. Then you'll get a full mineral count in the soil, and you'll get a full count of beneficial organisms in the soil. This diversity is extreme. The largest number and diversity of living organisms in any ecosystem in the known universe is the ecosystem of the soil. And the gut, particularly the human gut, because we eat such a diversity of elements. And we can eat more. We can eat way more than what we have and are now doing with our commercial crops. So hundreds of thousands of times more diversity is possible in our diets. We've increased our potential diversity of our food gardens 800 times since the Middle Ages. We can go 100,000 times more diverse easily. I'm working on that stuff with my mate Joseph Simcox. But anyway, that's the story, right? It's that simplified monoculture, bare soil, over-irrigated, simplified fertilized, soluble fertilizer, chemical pharmacy, big pharma issues, right? Come back to the garden, get a smaller garden with a larger diversity of composted, high mineralized soil, great populations of beneficial organisms in the soil, and you go into vital soil and vital food that keeps you younger, more active, more vital, not so much grey hair, more physical activity, less stress, continuous stimuli from studies, keeping your brain active, trying to answer questions about iodine and selenium and other things. All these things keep you a bit younger. Okay, let me check my watch. Where are we? All right, so our next one. Who's next? Michael Dewell Maybe how to live in Cogongrass, Imperata cylindrica, is slowly creeping into my yard and taking over. I can't keep up with the growth, and the city keeps trying to come after me for the height. Okay, what you need to do is take on rampancy with rampancy. Find something that the city aren't worried about. Some kind of ground cover, small bush rampancy that will also put organic matter back to the soil. So you've got to go out of trying to grow things that are useful to you right now. You've got to grow things that are rampant enough to overtake the Cogongrass, and then you keep chopping and mulching that to the soil and move the soil fertility past the Cogongrass, past the rampant ground cover, smother crop, green manure. It's usually going to be something like a fast-growing cover crop, green manure type crop, that you overseed 4-to-1, plus some fast-growing leguminous plants or bushes that will take a chop and a drop to the soil. So you're going to fast-track the building of organic matter, take the fertility past it. None of these problem weeds grow in really fertile soil because everything else grows really well and takes over. It's always a spatial race with the weeds. And right now, the spatial race is being won by something, this Cogongrass, because the fertility has allowed that to happen. All right? So speed up the organic build-up. Go away from your crops a minute and go into speeding up the organic matter processes. You'll get physical structure in the soil as well with the root zones, and just overpower it so there's no space for it. Go beyond it and then move into your productive crops. Okay, next one, Cindy Wang has got a question here about Roundup. What do I do if they've been using Roundup on my soil? Well, again, it's the same answer. You overplower it with cover crop, green manure crop, overseed it, get the organic matter flushing through. And if you want to garden in the meantime, put in raised beds that are a decent height, like 1/2 meter, 18 inches high at least, fill them up with good soil and water on the top so the water's going away and flushing the Roundup down. But you've got to flush that Roundup away. You've got about 3 years to get classified officially as organic if you've got Roundup recently used on your soil. But you speed up the process by fast organic matter cycles with cover crops. There you go.